This
that we're
conference will
awarding.
now be recorded.
Oh, thanks, Maya, or Ed, whoever did that. So yeah, as I said, most of you know that we are awarding the Golden Mangroves, which basically we give out, or the CAC gives out to the most outstanding Bay Mini grant of each year. Typically, this award is given the summer after the award year. So right now we would basically be giving out the 2019 award, but because of COVID and the staff changes, that got pushed back. So we are just now giving out the 2018 award. So alas, I invited all of our Bay Mini Grant, the 2018 Bay Mini Grant awardees to have an opportunity to come and present and give y'all a little bit of background about their project and what made the Bay Mini Grant program so important to them and to their program. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Walt Japp, who's with the Coffee Pot Bayou Watershed Alliance. Hold on, Walt.
Okay.
Let me play my screen. And
technology is always great.
alrighty, can y'all see it?
Here we go. I think we're on the second slide, but that's okay.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. Thank you very much. I enjoy being here with you guys, and hope I can tell you a little bit what we did in 2018, 2019. We began with a couple of meetings and formed a group. Next slide, please. And we did not have any money at the time, but we had a lot of goals and ideas. And eventually we have 13 people, 13 groups that are part of our program. The ones I've put in orange here have contributed either significant amounts of money and or equipment and support for the program. So they're very much, helping us out. We can see we have everything from Canterbury School to Episcopal Church, the Snell Owl Property Owners Association, and of course, we're very fortunate to have a grant that was presented to us for that period from the Estuary program. So the next one, please. So we received basically $1,940, and the goals were to sustain and improve the water quality in the Coffee Pot Bayou watershed. And there were three big things we were doing. There were cleanup programs involving the public, removing invasive plants, which we use both public volunteers as well as contractors, and water quality, which we involved ourselves with the Lake Watch program from the University of Florida. Next, please. So we can just take a look at the bayou here. It's a beautiful place. It's a little gem, an arm of Tampa Bay. And although it's a very big urban setting, it is quite a bit of natural habitat still left in the bayou. The next slide, please. If you look at the Google Earth here, you can see the bayou. It's in northeast St. Petersburg. It has approximately 100 acres of watershed. The primary flow of water comes either from stormwater or tide, with also a flow from Crescent Lake, which is a freshwater body which is located about a mile away. We set up 9 stations. 3 we call the Bird Island area. 2 are in the Granite. That's it. Yeah, go over there. That's fine. The next one. And that the 2 others are Granada Terrace, which is in the middle, and Coffee Pot Park in the north. This island is a very, very big bird rookery. 400 pairs of birds breed there annually, according to the Audubon Society. It's only an acre in size, but it has a lot of breeding activity going on there. Next slide, please. So we started off with working with Lake Watch. If you're familiar with the program, it is a monthly sampling program. We get total nitrogen, total phosphorus, as well as the chlorophyll A content in the water. And that is done, as I said, 9 samples. And they are collected, processed, frozen, and sent to the University of Florida. Next slide. During this time, we were very fortunate. Canterbury program for marine science joined with us. They were doing a lot of the sampling with us every month, and we were having the middle school students come along on the cruises, and they got an opportunity to sample and help process the water. Next slide, please. You can see, again, some of the students working here, and they all were very enthusiastic. We never had any problems. We were a little concerned here at this group here. You see they are not wearing the PFDs, which we sort of enforced pretty strongly later on in the program just to keep everyone safe and sound. Next slide. So the water quality in the bayou tends to be very similar on all of the 3 sites that we work, Bird Island, Granada Terrace, and the Coffee Pot Park area. They change over time, but they spatially are very similar. On the 2 left sides, where these are 2020 samples, which include Crescent Lake as well as Smacks Bayou, which we added later on. Next slide. So in nutrients, we use the Tampa Bay Estuary programs. Had a committee that looked at what the nitrogen and phosphorus levels should be in the bay. And our samples, which we have a limited number of because Lake Watch gets this data back to us very slowly, and they've been closed down for a while during the pandemic, and they've had some equipment failures. But at any rate, it's good news is that all the samples we've taken so far are pretty much in the within the boundary of total nitrogen and total phosphorus. The average of 701 for the nitrogen and 172 for the phosphorus. And this is based on 4 months worth of data in 2018. Next slide, please. So if you look at this as with an abstract of using multivariate statistics, you can see that the each month kind of is a pattern, is it unto its own, and they tend to work in a counterclockwise around the year. Maybe you don't see it here, but that's what we see. And it's a very important, I think, that we get out there and collect these data because it's a good weather for the bay itself as well as these tributaries that can contribute to the bay. And being that this is a highly urbanized area, these waters are susceptible to the storm waters as well as other influences. Next slide. The other thing the students do in Canterbury is they have a mugs gallery of dolphin fins. So they take pictures of all the dolphins that they see during the cruise, and they put them into their albums, and then they can come back over time. And I guess they're working with a group from NIMS that is also looking at this. So they are helping to collect data for a federal agency. The next slide. So we use bird monitoring also as a way to look at the way the water quality is in the bayou and whether or not the habitat is sustaining these birds. And we were fortunate. We have two of our stations are right next to the bird rookery, so we get an opportunity every month to see what's going on there. The next slide, please. So the birds are, as I said, they're top line predators. They're at the top of the food chain. They're eating and feeding on what's being developed or being created in the bayou, fish and invertebrates. And here you can see a great blue heron with a fish in its mouth, classic example of what's going on there. The next slide. And the roosting, a lot of, as I said, 400 different species of groups, pairs of birds are breeding in here according to the Audubon Society. And in this picture, I think there's 6 different species can be seen in there. Some of them are pretty not necessarily endangered, but rare, and on a special list that FWC has put together to try to track these things. Next slide. The census is, it's very, I think, important to try to keep track of what's going on, how many birds are out there. It's very much influenced by the time of year, time of day, as well as the water levels. And we see anywhere from 2 to 16 species on any particular cruise. And there's no real pattern here other than to say that it's probably more abundant bird life going on in the winter than in the spring and summer, because we've got the winter residents such as white pelicans and some of the duck species that use the bayou. Next slide. As I said, we're looking at the species of special concern. We have 3 or 4 of them that use the bayou. The little blue heron, on the left you see an immature juvenile, and on the right you see the adult form. And there's probably a half a dozen of these that on the rookery. Next slide. Tricolored heron again is moderately common in the bayou, and they breed and produce. The last year they produced very well. I think there were probably at least 20 fledglings that we saw. Next slide. This one is a reddish egret. This is the rarest bird we see. They were shot out of during the bird plume era in the 20s or the early 1900s, and they've made a very poor comeback. And so this is one we really want to keep an eye on. The next slide. And we have the common egrets, we have the pelicans, we have the cormorants. Let's go through the next couple of slides quickly here because they're just showing these birds that are quite common. The white pelican comes in from Minnesota in November, stays through March, and then they're gone. The other thing we do here is Helping Hands is the bird rescue group we work with. So when we do find injured birds, we are taking them out of the system and bringing them to the Helping Hands people. They get them to an infirmary, or if they're not able to rehab them and put them back in the wild, they're taken to a refuge. So we're trying to take care of that. I'll get into a little bit this later. The next habitat thing we'll talk about is the habitat restoration. We're talking about in 2019, 2018, we were working in Turtle Creek. If you're not familiar with this, it's a small tributary coming out of stormwater that separates Coffee Pot Park from the Masonic home property. And on the Masonic home property, there's what they call an easement. An easement means it belongs to no one, and no one takes care of it usually. And was the problem. It was covered with invasives. And so we decided that this was an area we really needed to focus our attention on. So we spent a lot of time and money on taking care of this problem. The next slide, please. To begin with, and our friend Jan Allen is in this photograph in the foreground. She came with a team of people from the Florida Native Plant Society, looked at the system, told us what was wrong, what we should deal with, and later advised us what plants to replace them with. And here she is working with Boy Scout Troop 219. This was a Saturday event, and I think we got probably a half a ton or more of debris out of there, a lot of mimosa, shyness, gray knicker beans. So next slide. We got into heavy hitting. The city of St. Petersburg Parks and Recs Department came in and helped us. They overall it was very much, we had 3 different events where we really had a contractor in there, Antoine Montgomery, which is above and beyond landscaping, and his team came in, and then they worked with this city, estimating that we got about 15 tons of invasives out of this area. Next slide. But here you can see we're starting to clear the area pretty well. This was on the 6th of April in 2019, and they were just about cleared by that point in time. The next slide. Here you can see it planted. We put 50 different plants in. These, as I said, were recommended by the Native Plant Society, and then we were paid for by Keep Pinellas Beautiful. And we hired a contractor to put them in. and they're all doing pretty well. I'll get into that, but they about 50 plants in here. In this area is about 50 by 10 meters, and we've enlarged it over time on both ends, so it's now probably more like about 70 meters by 15. Next slide. So you can see we have 50 different plants that we put in, about 10 different species, and we were paid for, as I said, by Keep Pinellas Beautiful, and they worked for the contractor and so forth, who was paid out of the grant monies. Next slide. This is what it looks like in October of 2020. So everything grew very well. I think we lost 3 gallberry plants, and it was a little bit of a drought-like time when we got the plants in the ground, and some of them were susceptible to dehydration. And but other than that, they've all done very, very well. Next slide. So in volunteer work, we've had about 190 people in 2018-19 participate, providing about 688 hours worth of labor. If you take that at, let's say, $15 an hour or something, it's a meaningful amount of labor. Thank you. Next. Another thing we did, we were able to successfully do some job boning and get a Wanda the water goat installed in Turtle Creek. And these things cost about $2,000, $3,000. And the funding came from the Surfing Preservation Foundation. Those are the guys that, if you see the surfers tag on the back of the cars, they paid for it and installed it. And we've been very fortunate because the Masonic Home Group during the pandemic and even earlier was doing the cleanup. They get down there probably once or twice a week and clean the place out. And they've had to move the mooring once because the water was going around the end that's closest to you in this photograph. And the city of St. Petersburg put those steps in on the far embankment that lead up to Coffee Pot Park to make it easier to get down there for the public to if they're going to have volunteers cleaning. Next slide. So another thing we're dealing with is this conflict between the fishing community and the birds. There's a lot of loose monofilament line that gets caught in the mangroves out on the island. The birds get entangled and then they succumb to that. And then sometimes we have like the yellow-crowned night heron up here. They get a hook in their mouth. It's very difficult to capture immediately because if they're healthy, they're going to fly away. You're not going to be easily capturing them. So we've been working in different ways to try to solve some and resolve some of that problem with public information. Next slide. Another problem we have is water lettuce. It comes into the bayou from growth that occurs in Crescent Lake, and it comes down a large culvert and empties into the bayou. The good news is it doesn't happen too often, but when it does, it's very noticeable. And it does degrade very rapidly. It's about, as you can imagine, it's like a 90% water, so there's not much biomass in it. But the city has since purchased a harvesting machine, and it was installed and used several times and did a very good job, and then it broke down, and I guess it's fixed again now, so hopefully we're going to keep a good control on this problem. Next one. So I thank you very much for your time and interest, and certainly hope that you found some information was valuable to you here. And we appreciate all the hardworking volunteers we have and all the people that support us. We're very fortunate. We feel very grateful for everything that's been done and how we've grown over the past 3 years. And I'll be more than happy to answer questions if you have them.
Just kidding. Great. Thanks, Walt. Are there any questions for Walt on his project?
This is Erica. I have just one quick question.
Sure.
Hey, Walt, how are you?
That's not
a quick question. Yeah, I haven't got to talk to you in a long time. Yes, exactly. I still have trauma about that dive in the shipping channel in Tampa Bay, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm just curious if this project is set up, in the past couple of years so that like the database of information about, the charismatic megafauna as well as all the other parts and pieces, so that the kids are from Canterbury particularly are building, so you can start to see like trends in the environment and the habitat. Is that being done and accessible?
Well, what we do is we do produce our, our reports, and we make the information available through the school as well as through the estuary programs. Um, as you can imagine, with the pandemic right now, we're kind of in an impasse with working with the schools much. But I talked to Jenna about 2 months ago, and she was hopeful that they were going to be getting their boat back in the water and getting active again. But we certainly are willing to share this information. We have a lot of imagery. We have quite a bit of hard data from the water quality as well.
Cool. It's just really interesting to see what the with the environmental changes that have happened in the past year, and more people observing, if there's some differences from year to year. So really cool. I'm glad that the students are involved too, particularly ones that live in the area and can help encourage the other residents to follow suit with protection and observation.
We're very fortunate. All the boat support we get from the local population around here. There's 3 or 4, probably half a dozen different neighbors that live on the bayou or close to the bayou have boats that have given us that support. So we're real lucky with that.
Oh, exciting stuff. Thanks.
Yep.
Are there any questions, other questions for Walt? Well, I will say that we did just have a big check award ceremony for Walt and the Coffee Pot Bayou Watershed Association a couple days ago, where Pinellas County Commissioner Justice handed Walt a large check for his 2020 Bay Mini grant. So really exciting stuff, and we love what you're doing out there, Walt, and thank you for what you and Bonnie and everybody else on your team does.
We appreciate
Hey, Sheila.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this is Dylan. It looks like my computer mic is not working. I have a quick question for Walt, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Walt, you mentioned some educational materials for fishers in the area. I'm hoping you can kind of expand on that. I'm curious what projects you guys are working on in that regard.
What we were trying to do is we were trying to get some signage, and we're working with the city and with the estuary program to come up with the verbiage. And I think we all got sort of sidelined when the pandemic came up because it hasn't moved forward too much beyond the conceptual side. But we do want to indulge in that, because I think you see it all the time. There's people fishing and they're not paying attention to what they're doing, and if they do hook or catch a bird, they're not dealing with it the way it should be done. And if we can get some more information, I know the Tampa Bay Watch has done some stuff in this area, and we're very supportive of that, as well as other things that we can do, and hopefully improve the quality. Because I think rescuing birds I'd rather not do that if I don't have to.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks.
Thanks again, Walt.
Sure.
Up next, we have G. Steve Jordan with the G. Steve Jordan Films to give some background on his Tampa Bay video that he made with his Estuary Program Award.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sheila. I don't have a real presentation. I sent Sheila a couple of clips. I hope that the committee reviews the video series I made. I have a little definition here that when I first learned about the estuary program, I asked for, I guess it was the comprehensive management plan is what it was called, I believe. And I went through it. It was mostly scientific, kind of along the lines of what Walt just presented. And by the way, I have a biology degree and I work for some environmental groups out of college. And I thought a lot of times we in the environmental community weren't doing a great job of connecting the dots for people. And so when I saw this, it says in the comprehensive management plan for TBEP be a reliable, compelling voice for science, recognizing storytelling is a powerful evidence-based technique to inspire behavior change and lasting awareness of the Tampa Bay Estuary. And I thought, well, you know, I think a lot of times, the presentation Walt just gave is a perfect example. So all the people who are attending this who have a science background understand that, hey, you know, if the birds are safe and the environment is safe, we're going to have a better place to live and to recreate and to just enjoy. But I think sometimes we assume that everybody kind of knows what we do, and I think we don't often cross the finish line with respect to, well, what does it mean for me? There's a marketer I follow, Seth Godin, and he says, tell me a story with me in it. And I thought a lot of times people, the average person on the street, I think often, I don't want to insult anybody, but I think sometimes Tampa Bay talks about seagrass. And we all know how important seagrass is. If the seagrass is healthy, the water's clear, there are creatures that can live in there that are then the prey for the big birds that Walt just showed. It's a web that is so important to the whole beauty and health of Tampa Bay Estuary Program. But the average person, if you belly up to the bar and you say, oh yeah, I just helped preserve and bring back seagrass into Tampa Bay Estuary Program, they're going to say, yeah, so what? And so I wanted to do a video series that connected the dots a little bit and kind of talk to people who aren't necessarily the ones who are advocating for this, but who are the beneficiaries of what Tampa Bay Estuary Program does. And I don't know if Sheila, if you want to play, the two clips I sent to Sheila, if they will play, would be, one was a professor who was talking about, you know, at the end of the day, what does the work that TBEP mean? What does it mean for all of the residents of Tampa Bay? And I can't remember what the other one is, but if you want to play those real quickly, Sheila, see if they'll work.
Sure. Is there a specific order you want me to play them in,
I don't think so. No, thank you.
Okay. Let's see.
If it works. If it doesn't, we'll. Yeah.
People come here to ride their bikes, to bird, to jog, walk, walk their dogs, kayak, paddleboard, and all the time they stop us and say thank you for what we've done out here. And Tampa Bay Estuary Program has played such a large role in that. It's just mind-blowing how much people love it out here. Were you able to hear it?
Yeah, a little laggy. I heard it. Did everybody else hear that one?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I could see it, and I had the voice was a little low, but I could hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you play the other one, that would be great. Oh, it's Lene, the professor.
That's the lifestyle that we have here in Florida, is this sunshine. It is, even if you're not near the beach, it's close to the beach. And that all depends on this connection between the shore and the land being as healthy as possible. And that's what we're doing and what Tampa Bay Estuary Program is doing is great. And if you enjoy that outdoor environment, if you enjoy listening to Jimmy Buffett relaxing on the beach, we're giving you more of that. We're giving you more fishing days with your buddies so you can tell stories and catch and release. And we're bringing it back to the natural state so that everybody can enjoy that environment.
Yeah, so that's basically it. I thought that, you know, I love when Lene says, if you like listening to Jimmy Buffett on the beach. I mean, exactly. So I think what I found true about Tampa Bay Estuary Program, which is true of a lot of nonprofits I work with, is they're typically saying, you know, we're the best kept secret. People should know what we do, but then they don't do a great job necessarily of allowing the average person to understand how the work they're doing affects them in their everyday lives. And the video series I did, I think, helps a little bit to help people connect the dots between the science and the end result for the average person who probably thinks, you know, I don't understand about nitrogen loading and what it means to me. So that's basically it. And yeah, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Wait, I have a question. And this is as much for Joe, is how are we using the videos? I know they're on the YouTube channel. How are you getting them out there?
Yeah, so right now they're featured on the YouTube channel. Like you said, they're also on the front page of our website. Ed just linked in the comments or the chat to the series. I try to share them as appropriate, and I definitely share them more. But initially, when G. Steve did finish them, we posted them on Instagram. We tried to give a little bit of a social media push. And then we also frequently in a newsletter or a Bay postscript, I'll try to cycle out which ones get featured.
One thing I'll just point out real quickly, and I don't know how this could happen with Tampa Bay Estuary program, but other clients that I've worked with, we've worked together so that we can slice and dice a longer video. Let's say it's a 3 or 4 minute video, and just have like the little clips that were just played. Like if they're less than a minute, they can go on Instagram. And I think a lot of the stuff, which is what's nice about a lot of the stuff, is pretty evergreen. You know, the healthy environment never gets dated. And by the way, Jan, that's the question you just asked is a perennial issue that I have with people I've worked with. And no, it's not a you know, no blame or anything. It's just kind of like, it's very difficult, I think. I know what a small staff you guys have, and I think what the challenge is, how do you then add on to this, add that layer of communication? And so a lot of my clients, they use it initially, and then it kind of is a little bit sitting there waiting to be used, which I guess I'm biased, so I hope it's used more widely and frequently, but it is there. So yeah.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that quickly, I think G. Steve, we both recognize that that's a difficult thing for anyone to do when they have a great piece of content. And so, and maybe I'll touch on it later in a quick staff update, but G. Steve and TBP are going to work on a tarpon tag focused project where recognizing that it's, you can only get so much attention out of a single piece of content, but if we try to break up things a little bit more and create smaller shareables, we can get more shelf life out of this content. So that's, to your question, Jen, that's one of the approaches that we've recognized the difficulty in sharing content and keeping it evergreen, and this is some approach we're going to take to try to remedy that.
And just to add, Maya said that we shared them at SURF also, so they were shared to the greater scientific community too. Any other questions for Steve?
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. So moving along, I'm going to pass it over to Debbie Stone from the Florida Aquarium to talk about their World Oceans Day.
Great, thank you. It was actually fun putting the PowerPoint together for this because, as everybody has already alluded to, with the last year having been very wonky, not really a new normal, a new weird, it was like a trip down memory lane because it brought back a time and a place that we haven't seen for a while. Yeah, I see Kathy nodding. It was really, like, I had to really dig back into, oh yeah, and all the memories started flooding back. So I'm really excited to share this with you. And it's got some wonderful visuals and so forth. So I did have the PowerPoint. Do I need to share that, or I think, Sheila, you're going to put that up? Yeah.
It's up to you. I just made you the presenter. If you'd like to share, I'm also capable of sharing it for you.
Okay.
It's your preference.
All right. Let me see if I make sure I do this right.
We're seeing your screen.
Okay. What exactly are you seeing the PowerPoint?
We're seeing
I think you need to enlarge it.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. So everybody can see it fine now, because now I can't see you. So I just want to make sure that everything looks good.
It looks perfect.
Okay. So we had a community engagement day back in 2019 over a World Oceans Day celebration. And essentially the event took place over the weekend of June 8th and 9th, which was nice because World Oceans Day fell on a Saturday that year. And again, when we take that trip down memory lane, if you remember that the 2018 was a severely extreme red tide year, and it resulted in a lot of questions and inquiries. We had a lot of visitors asking questions. We were getting phone calls. So it was a perfect time for us to do an awareness weekend. So what we did was we had over that Saturday and Sunday, we had some activity stations. We had takeaway bookmarks, we had infused content into our programming about red tide, and then we also administered visitor surveys to see what their takeaways were after they participated in the table activities, sharing information about red tide. Over those 2 days, we had about 8,400 visitors. And I believe when we get to the survey data, you'll see, I think we had about 250 some odd respondents. But what I did want to share was that it was a highly attended weekend. So while it's always hard to get people to stop and take a survey, it was a very highly attended weekend. So there were over 8,000 folks that came and participated in it, even if they didn't stop and engage at the activity stations, by weaving red tide content into our existing programming, like our interpretive tables, trail talks, we have exhibit narrations, even some of our shows. Just about every visitor that came through should have had some red tide content presented to them throughout the weekend. Okay, so just a few shots of the activity stations, and we put the very first activity station right at the entrance to the wetlands gallery, and that was an intentional move because it was one of the first things that people encountered. So that was sort of a visual cue that when they saw other stations throughout the aquarium, they would know to stop, and that we would have activities and the bookmark takeaways and so forth. So with this first station, we had microscope slides. Again, we had the bookmarks, we had some videos going, and this is kind of the first introduction to red tide content. Each activity station was meant to stand alone, however, because not everybody follows the exhibit pathway at the aquarium exactly the same way. They didn't need to stop at every single one, or even in the same order. They could do a different activity or experience something different at each one of those tables, no matter what order they went through. Okay, there we go. And so here's a couple of other activity stations that we had. One was focused on ocean pollution, and we had some content woven in there about red tide and some misconceptions about people's, well, we had a lot of questions about, isn't red tide just pollution? So we were kind of trying to explain there some basic content about red tide so people could understand that, believe it or not, it's not a fancy way of just saying pollution, because some people came in with that misconception. So let's see here. All right. I know it's probably not, you're probably not able to actually read exactly what's on the bookmarks, but what I wanted to share with you was that one side of the bookmark had some basic fast facts. So people could just quickly grab a bookmark and leave with some basic information about red tide. But then on the other side of the bookmark, we had hotlines and resources, so that folks knew who to call to get information, or if they wanted to report something, because that was one of our goals, was not only for people to know about red tide and have some basic information, but also if they needed to report an injured or sick animal, or unfortunately a dead manatee or something like that, which unfortunately we know was a tough year for that, that they knew what to do when they encountered things like that. So we gave away every single bookmark that weekend, so that was great. Actually, I think we had a handful left over, but for the most part, everybody took a bookmark, so that was fantastic. And so hopefully people are still using them now as they read. And then, as I mentioned, we wove red tide content into all the presentations and interpretive content that we did throughout the weekend. So you'll see we have dive shows, We have interpretive encounters at exhibits, animal encounters, different kinds of presentations. So we beefed up all of our content that weekend so that we could focus on red tide. So that again, as people went through the exhibit pathway, whether they stopped at that exhibit table or even and we also encourage them to take a bookmark if they hadn't. So if they were at a show or a presentation and we said, hey, did you get a bookmark? They said, oh, no, we didn't. We told them, make sure you stop at an activity station because there are bookmarks at every single one of those stations. So I think that really did help in enticing people to take them with them. And people like free stuff. They always do bookmarks, pens, you name it. People love to take that kind of stuff with them. And then one of my favorite parts about the weekend was gathering visitor surveys and trying to collect some data, because that's not, again, not always easy to do. If you've been to the aquarium or other facilities like ours, you know, a lot of times people just want to move on. They want to look at things, they want to encounter, they don't always want to stop and interact. So the opportunity to actually get almost 300 surveys from people was a big win for us, because a lot of people just really don't want to stop. But people were, you know, eager to do it when we gave them a pen, now that I think about it. That's why I say they trip down memory lane. I'm thinking like, oh, wait, we actually did say they could take a pen if they completed a survey. So I think that helped. But what we can share with you is, as you can see, when people came in before the aquarium, most people rated their knowledge as being medium or somewhat informed. Very few people said very high. I knew a lot about Florida red tide. Some did. Some people said non-existent. But after they interacted with the aquarium educators, that did change a little bit. The numbers for informed but not an expert increased. So that was good. That was kind of our goal, was to just move people up the continuum, because we knew not everybody was going to leave thinking they were red tide expert. Again, that wasn't our intent. But we did want to see that people felt more confident and that they felt like they knew more than they did, at least before they walked in our doors. And slightly fewer saying novice, I'm a blank slate. And so again, just some general questions just to see if folks are getting the information that we're sharing. General questions like, which of the following best describes what a red tide is? So thankfully, most folks, after interacting with educators, understood that it was a harmful algal bloom, and didn't select things like jellies or plastic pollutants or decaying plant materials. So that was great to see. Then also you can see that they seem to grasp the concept that Florida red tide has been around for a long time. It's not a new thing. And that was also another one of our goals, which is just kind of explain the history, that this is something that has been occurring regularly and historically. So we could see that most folks answered that correctly. And then also we did want to, this is one of the areas where we talk about where we would want to go back and dig into our content a little bit. This is why data is really important. We realized that not as many people as we wanted grasped the concept that Florida red tide can stick around for a very long time. In fact, again, if you remember in that 2018, some scientists say, well, it never really went away. It just got worse and ebbed and flowed and so forth. So while more people answered false than true, we were still a little disappointed that most folks didn't get the content that it doesn't just naturally break down in a few months. Something to learn, just one of the things that we would beef up again if we really wanted to drive that concept home. Not as many people remember the scientific name for Florida red tide, but at least most people got it right. And then again, I was pleased to see that most people understood that while marine life can be affected by Florida red tide, human health is indeed affected. So while some people did say that it's true that human health is not affected, the vast majority did say false. So we might beef that up a little bit more so people truly understand the connection that Florida red tide can definitely impact human health. And that surprised me too, because actually at the time, I remember a lot of reports about how people were being affected. So I was a little bit surprised to get that response. And then on the last question that we asked, we had everybody basically check all that apply, which again, most people checked everything correctly. The only thing, I was glad that not more people said that you're supposed to use extra fertilizer on your lawn to nourish the vegetation during a red tide. You want to see like 0 there, but not as many people said that. But thankfully, the other responses were high enough to see that most people were getting the message about the things to do when we're experiencing a Florida red tide. So I believe that is the conclusion of the presentation. I think I can go ahead and pause screen sharing. Is that what I need to do? I'm not as familiar with GoToMeeting. I'm sorry. Okay, you can't see my screen anymore, right?
No, we can. You just are you on the app or?
Nope, I'm at on my desk.
Here, I can just steal screen sharing back from you.
Okay, perfect. I'm a Zoom expert and a GoToMeeting novice.
That's okay.
But I can see everybody again, so that's a good thing. So yeah, so that was a really wonderful weekend. And I will say the content that we presented that weekend, we have been continuing to share red tide content even when we weren't having a World Oceans Day weekend celebration. So that did also increase our ability or our capacity to deliver content about red tide so that our visitors have a little bit more understanding and knowledge. And again, the trip down memory lane, if you can put yourself in that time and place, it was very, very severe. So it was the perfect time to really be educating folks because people were concerned and they had a lot of questions. So I think it was a really successful weekend. And I do thank the Tampa Bay Estuary program for providing the opportunity for us to do this with our community because I think it was valuable and I think it was needed. So if folks have questions, I'll do my best to answer. It feels like a lifetime ago, but.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Debbie. I agree. I think that it was perfect timing for that type of project. So hopefully we don't have another severe red tide, but we all know it'll probably.
Yeah,
we'll see. Are there any questions for Debbie? Hearing none and not seeing any in the chat. Thanks again, Debbie, for coming. We really appreciate it. So moving on, we pass it to Catherine. How's it going, Kathy? So you said you want me to share your presentation or you want to share your presentation?
I have it up and can go. It's just if you can try to play the video successfully for the group, that will work on that slide.
We're gonna try and do it, but I'm gonna pass.
Right.
I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Okay. There it is. Share. Is it sharing? Is it there? Do you see it? Everybody disappears.
I can see your you're showing your presenter's notes.
I see, and it does that automatically, and I don't need notes. Let me see if I can flip-flop the display. Swap. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know what you can see on your end. So our Tampa Bay mini grant title was Lights, Camera, Conservation, a day of estuarine exploration at the Suncoast. And the Suncoast, as I said, is a hands-on marine conservation education center in Apollo Beach. And our goal for this mini grant was to create an opportunity for diverse and underserved youth to be able to come outside and learn about the Tampa Bay watershed and basically the students' backyards. And then by having this camera and video equipment handy, they could then take what they've learned on their field trip experience and turn it into some fun and informational videos that we can continue to share. So we coupled this with, you still see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, we coupled this with another grant that we received from the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. The funding from that organization covered transportation to bring a busload of 50 students and covered one substitute teacher per day. And we invited the Title I schools from Hillsborough County School District to come to our site to do a hands-on STEM field trip that was designed to be a review for either 5th grade students or 8th grade students who would have to take the standardized testing that school year. We designed what those 3 lessons would be based on, we actually reviewed the 2018 Florida statewide science assessment questions to see what topics were most frequently asked about on the exams, so that we could design a review that would cover the majority of material possible for a short 4-hour field trip to our site. And what you see here is a general agenda for each field trip. We did a pre-program evaluation, then they rotated through 3 45-minute stations with a post-program evaluation at the end of their stay. If you were an elementary school student, they did a lesson on fiddler crabs that reviewed life cycles and taught about how to collect data and use the scientific method to do hypothesis testing. Classification, I learned, is a big struggle among some students, and so we designed a sea turtle classification lesson where they actually used this dichotomous key you can see in the top left picture to identify the 5 endangered and threatened sea turtle species in Florida. And then we went on to establish the differences between sea turtles and freshwater turtles and tortoises here in Florida. And their 3rd lesson had to do with fish adaptations and a fashion of fish activity where they invented a new species and then presented on it. If you were a middle school student, we used a modified Project Wild activity, which we call Oh Fish. You can see a picture of the game in action. Again, Debbie, going down memory lane. I wish we could have kids running around like this right now. During this activity, the kids actually got to play out a game where they could see and visualize and graph how population sizes change through time, and a really good ability to understand what carrying capacity is and how limiting factors in habitats can affect the population dynamics through time. We had a fish sampling methods where the youth on site essentially mimicked what FWC fishery independent monitoring survey scientists do in the field. They collected the fish using the seine in the back, took down all the data, and then made predictions on what they thought other fish communities might be like in other estuary nursery habitats within the watershed. And then they participated in non-native fish dissections using tilapia, where they explored their inner fish and internal and external anatomy. But we had a problem. We wanted to have the ability to create these videos, but we had no working digital cameras. We have no video equipment. We didn't have GoPros. This was like 2018, 2019, and we had only opened our doors to the public in 2017. So we reached out to TBEP for the mini grant program to obtain our camera equipment, and together it all worked. We had 697 youth coming from 10 Title I schools, pretty even split between males and females, and you can see the ethnicity demographic breakdown here. Sly Middle School, Yates Elementary, and Waimama Elementary were 3 of the 4 schools we tried to get to do and participate in the video project. The 4th, which was the second middle school, which would have been the 4th video, that school had an emergency happen with the leads teacher who was coming, and the principal said that they could not trust her students with a substitute teacher to leave the campus. So they were not able to participate, which was kind of heartbreaking. So of the 323 students who made the videos using the camera equipment provided by the mini grant, 35% were Hispanic and 33% were from an African American background. We had 539 of those evaluations returned to us. And so looking at knowledge gained, we actually had a significant increase in what the kids learned while they were on site. Ranges by school showed a 12.5% increase up to a 37.9% increase in what they learned while they were here. And I say knowledge gained because it was an actual test where the survey had questions and those questions had a correct answer. Then in the next bullet, we also designed a survey that used the Likert scale, kind of like what Debbie was just showing you, where you had a scale of 1 to 5 so that the students could sort of self-assess their own feelings and attitudes and behaviors toward conservation stewardship and their value of protecting the watershed. And even with that survey. Our pre-post evaluation showed a significant increase in a positive way of their feelings for environmental stewardship at both the elementary and middle school grade levels. So what is the impact of this for our community and the environment? Just on this project alone, we have showed that hundreds of students have actually measurably improved their skill and awareness for the Tampa Bay watershed resources. And by having the availability now of this camera equipment at our site for partner use, for our use, we will be able to continue to help thousands of students potentially gain and retain the information. So about these videos, that was our product for the mini grant. Sam Tehan here in the picture was our videographer and producer. She met with Gus Holzer, who was a professional filmmaker before coming to FWC. He and Carol sat down with her, gave her a whole tutorial. And Sheila, if you could please play that first YouTube video. This is the shortest of them all. I hope that you all may take the time. You can just switch over while you're switching over. I hope all 3 videos total about 15 minutes. So if you ever have a coffee break and you want a fun break, really take the time to watch, because you'll see the fun, just the expressions on their face and the range of the emotions that they go through. It was a success. Go ahead, hit play.
What are you doing? I'm collecting fiddler crabs. This is normal behavior for you. Only for science. That looks like the monster from our thing. Well, they do have 10 legs like all crabs, but they're not exactly giant. They don't get much bigger than this. What do they eat? Bacteria, after little tiny foam things. That's a relief for most of these people. But look at this. Baby footed crabs live in the water. This is what they look like. They look like my cousin's tree. As they look like this. And when they grow up, they live on the land in the marsh. Why is there holes in your food? The big-footed crabs dig burrows to live in. Let's take a look. The big ball means it's a boy. Oh, like my antenna, that means it's a boy. Look at all the big balls we got. These must be dead crabs here. No, the crabs can drop to run away from predators. The crab that lost it is probably still living. So he just live in one claw? No, they reproduce. Now you have collected them on. What do? We record our data and then we answer the questions. Let me show you. As scientists, we use data to answer questions. We wanted to know if there were more males or female crabs. Here's what we found. So there are 66 fiddler crabs living in your marsh. Now we think there are more. Remember all those burrows we saw and the fiddler crabs that escaped? When we tried to catch them all. That makes sense, but why study them at all? They may be small, but they're really important to us. They help us determine if the ecosystem is healthy. My mom found me in my cell phone. I better get out of here before I get in trouble. Thanks for all the information.
You can click back over. So I know it was hard to hear on my end. I apologize for the jerky nature of some of the sound. There was some funny little puns in there. The kids had a blast doing it. If I share back, can you share me back?
I'm working on it.
So what we found is when we did on those same survey evaluations, the last one was blank, where they could just provide their own feedback to us about their experiences on the field trip. The elementary kids loved giving us feedback about being in the movie. Just like Steve said, sharing that story that included them in it. They loved being the movie stars, sharing in the story. When we got into some of the feedback from the elementary school students, that's where we started to not hear so much about the videos, but more about right here. They were no longer afraid. They overcame their fears by coming here and getting dirty, getting wet. And now they understand more about how they affect the water, and they want to take care of their environment. So I really feel like it was making a good positive influence for kids here in the Bay Area. I have to give a shout out to Lisa, Nicole, and Shauna with Hillsborough County School District, who were very instrumental in getting us in direct contact with the Title I schools, the recreational bus company that helped us get the kids here. All these other folks were listed in our acknowledgements, and then Tico and Florida Aquarium are our partners here in Apollo Beach and help support the grant with their letters. And so I hope you guys see and take the time to go and watch those videos, because we really are, I think, creating that next generation that cares about Tampa Bay and their contribution to immediate and long-term improvement of our watershed. And I can't thank you enough for allowing us and giving us the support to do this grant with these kids. It was a blast. I miss those days.
I think we all do. Well, thank you, Kathy. Are there any questions for Kathy?
Yeah, actually, I have a question, Kathy. Yeah, I think it's great, the kids doing the video. Have you done this, or have you thought about trying to have the kids share it with their parents and get a distributed like that? I did a project years ago where once the parents saw something about the kids, then they were, of course, more interested. Their little baby was in it. And I'm just wondering if that's something you guys have thought about doing or actually done.
Yeah, we've given the links. Like, I know the Tampa Estuary program has it on their YouTube page. All the sponsors have it on their YouTube pages. We had it only recently they had to be recreated. We had a hard drive crash, and so they had to be redone in 2020. And so with the new school year, we are sending them to the teachers who participated. Like, all the schools that participated received copies of the YouTube link, so they can now play it in their classroom to maybe try and help show and overcome some of those fears maybe before they come for a field trip, or to encourage just going outside themselves. And we provided them, so we gave them to the teachers, not to the households. I don't have the individual children contact information. I just have contact with the teachers of the classes who came and the science coordinators for the school district. But that is our goal, that they will continue to use it in the classroom, share it with their students, and in generations to come, not just that one particular class.
Wonderful.
It was fun, learning experience.
Are there any other questions for Kathy? All right, well, thank you, Kathy, for your awesome presentation. Moving on to Ernie Frankie, one of the our CAC members, to talk about his project at the shores of Long Bayou. So Ernie, did you want me to present your presentation for you?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Ready?
Ready when you are.
Yes, March to the Sea, where we reconnected Woodshort Pond to Long Bayou Estuary. This is 2018. The year is 2019. It's just the first 9 months. We finished the project in September of 2019. Next slide. We asked the question, what does Gandhi's Salt Walk March to Sea, Tampa Bay's Charting the Course, and the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge have in common? We'll get to the answer to that at the end. Next slide. We look at the focused subset of Tampa Bay Estuary Program's goals, and they get that from the CCMP starting the course. And we specialize in these 5 areas right here. Invasive species, where we manage invasive species in Tampa Bay and its watershed, maximize the cost effectiveness with collaboration for others, fish and wildlife, preserve the diversity and abundance of bay wildlife, and education. And then BH9, enhance the biodiversity by removing the salinity barriers and enlist stakeholders to help do this. The last thing, which is the most important, is public education involvement. We've got the, we'll treat that in several slides. Let's go on to the next chart. Here's what we achieved. IS2, removal of invasive species. We got rid of pepperwood, carrotwood, bean trees from the watershed, and we replaced some of the trees with Florida native pine trees. Restoration of the connecting streams. We first we dredged the overflow of 2 stormwater ponds and wood stork pond. They emptied into wood stork pond. Then we dredged between wood stork pond and the existing tidal stream. And then finally we dredged the tidal stream to Long Bayou Estuary in order to get the thing called tidal flush, where the salt water would come in and through that tidal stream and actually invade the wood stork pond. Next is habitat restoration. We restored the brackish mangroves, supporting the different waterfowl, mainly the roseate spoonbill and the wood stork, and the fish nursery. These places are great for fish nurseries because it's calm water and they have access to the sea. And then regional education, the other point we worked on was we have the several things. We have the monthly wetland committee reports to the HOA. You'll see that. Then we have the wetland committee newsletters to the volunteers, which are about every 2 weeks roughly. That's activities that our volunteers actually do. And then PowerPoint presentations at local, regional, and state levels. And then we generated a thing we called conservation modules, DIY, do it yourself. And we would pass these off to other communities on our success on how to do different things. Once we learned how to do things, then we would pass it on to others. And then finally, we conducted tours of our nature reserve and stormwater ponds. Next slide, please. Okay, to introduce you to the area that we're working with, this is the shores of Long Bayou in the dotted green line there. You can see this is located right here. You can see Lake Seminole over to the right, and that's Park Boulevard. At the sort of top of the screen, or almost top of the screen, is Seminole Boulevard. That's Park Boulevard and Seminole Boulevard. So that gives you an idea where it is. And you'll see we have 1 mile of mangrove shorelines. We're 77 acres in there. We have 10 stormwater ponds, 2 lakes, a nature reserve on the 77 acres. Most of it is nature reserve. And the area we're going to focus on is that light blue over there, where it's a wood stork pond project. You'll see more of that in the next slide, please. Okay, here it is. We're focusing on, you can see in the lower left is wood stork pond right there. This picture was taken about 15 years ago, actually. And so wood stork pond, and then we have the lower green dotted line is this thing, the existing tidal stream. That takes it, the connection between wood stork pond and Long Bayou right there. That's what we're going to be rejuvenating. In wood stork pond, it was just almost covered completely with peppers. And then the tidal stream right there, that was almost totally filled in with just silt. And so it's a matter of getting those both going again. But 20 years ago, they didn't have that problem. Okay, next slide. So the first step was to restore the connection between the 2 stormwater ponds, the overflows. Right here, you'll see then the Anhinga pond down here in this Swiftmud drawing, and the pool pond. The overflows went into wood stork pond over in the lower left, and we had to get that connection between that outflow and wood stork pond itself, which means clearing the disc. And you can see these different photos. These are some of our volunteers. We have a group of about roughly 30 active volunteers that are out there almost every other weekend. And then we restored that connection. You can see in the lower right where the outflow flows into Woodstock Pond. Next slide. Just a review that we removed Brazilian peppers, carrotwood, and Gumby bean trees. And they're on Flipsy's category 1. The peppers and the carrotwood are. And the bean trees are coming up fast. Okay, next. We set a goal, a long-term goal of being completely pepper-free community. We're probably about 95% invasive free right now. And that's the work we've done over the last 10 years. Okay, partnering with other organizations. The CCMP tells us to do that. We partnered with, say, the Keep Pinellas Beautiful, the Adopt a Shore program, where for the last 7 years we've been maintaining it trash-free along the 1 mile of shoreline that we have. The Native Plant Society, they give us a lot of advice. They funded the Florida native pine trees. Wilcox Nursery gave us a cut and gave us some advice. The HOA, we partnered with them for funding and approval. Then Flipsy's Kathy Braddock Burke's education. They've funded us for several years on the educational expenses. And then nationally, Tampa Bay Estuary mini grant program. So we've got a lot of different people we work with. Okay, now we'll jump into the like the flagship of our project. Next slide. What you have here on the left is the our neighbors. We have 77 acres, but we on bordering us on the where the existing tidal stream is a neighbor's house right here. And he had put in a 20-foot bridge, aluminum bridge, from his house onto our land. We didn't know about it because the whole area was totally contained with peppers. Now he cleared that area out, added a soaker hose in that area. His neighbors couldn't even see it because it was so dense there. You couldn't see what was on left and right. And he was growing marijuana right there, just simply 100 yards from our HOA office. We didn't know anything about it. Okay, next slide. So what we did is, on advice from the city, we sent him a letter and said, you have one of two choices. You can either take the bridge out and get rid of it, or you can just deny ownership and we'll take it out. And we favor the second thing. He wrote us back and said, take it out. He didn't know anything about it. And so we got it that afternoon. We got a F-250 truck and a lot of volunteers, got it onto our land. You can see us moving right there. And then we moved it just about 20 feet maybe over to another area, which is the connection between Woodstock Pond and the tidal stream, that little bits of thing. It's going to later be dredged. We'll dredge it later. But we moved it over there, and now we have this bridge here. The really funny part, I think, next slide, as we posed on the bridge, volunteers that particular day, our newfound prize, somebody remarked that the bridge needed a name. Several silly names came up and they were tossed out. Then someone said, call it the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge. A few seconds later, somebody whispered, who was Mary Jane anyway? You just gotta love the innocence. It was another time. So there's the group that were just moving the bridge that day. Okay, next slide. An overview. It's a dry season right now, and the pond is kind of dried up. This is Woodstock Pond. Now, what we've done is, in past, we've taken out all the invasives. You can see how much it was just solid Brazilian peppers here. You can see the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge down at the lower center, right there, going over to the neighbor's land. And we've moved it now. Now it's going across the entrance. This is the tidal stream, right, going like along the bottom there. And the entrance to Woodstock Pond is that little path. And now with the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge that we acquired, crossing that little canal feeding Woodstock Pond, now we've extended our nature trail by roughly about a mile. And now we have 2 mile nature trail going around our entire property. People love that for walking. Okay, let's get into the project. Next slide, please. we hired professionals to start clearing some of the, because it's large, a lot of weight, a lot of things, and we're helping them out, but essentially they're in charge of clearing it out. First, in the upper left, we have inside that big quagmire right there is the tidal stream, the existing tidal stream. We'll see a lot more of it later. And they're naturally clearing it out, mulching or chipping. And you can see how long it's been there. The lower left where the carrot wood, it's 20 years of growth right there. And we kept all the mulch on site. We used that, and it's very handy. Tons and tons of mulch. And they took away the stock right there. Next slide. See, at night or in the afternoons, we would come in and clean up what the professionals did. We'd take out more peppers and things like that, and just tidying the place up. Next slide. This is a before and after clearing along the tidal stream itself. Here it was before. We've done some clearing here. Volunteers had, but still, there was in the upper left. You'll see where you can't even see the tidal stream. Then, before in each case, and afterwards, we can see where we've gone back to the tidal stream. We have to clear it in order to dredge. You have to get to the tidal stream. Here. Next slide. This shows you what the tidal stream is, the upper left, before, and then after we started clearing. That's just volunteers clearing all this stuff out. And you needed to gain access. That was the main problem. You can't have a dredging machine unless you have access to it. Volunteers are clearing out everything so we can even get to the dredging. Okay, next slide, please. We hired a mini excavator, and you can see us, clearing out you can look at it right there. You see what we're doing in the upper right. We're piling it onto like the banks right there, building up the banks and clearing it out so we'll have a flowing stream and removing the salinity barriers. Okay, next slide, please. What we wanted to do was to restore the wood stork pond habitat. No one can really get to easily because you have to go through mangroves to get to the center or the wood stork pond itself. So the actually pond in the area is a little over an acre. It's separated. It's secluded right there, and it's a place for fish to nursery and some of the wood stork and roseate spoonbills, other things, herons, all this stuff right here. So it serves as a wood stork habitat. Next slide, please. And then working with the Florida Native Plant Society, we planted 28 pine trees there to fill in the areas between the pines that were already there. We also gave an acoustic or an optical buffer between one of our buildings and looking at the neighbors. So that was very important to do. We listened to that, and we, the Florida Native Plant Society, donated those plants. Next slide, please. We spent a lot of time on education. That's a very important thing, and you'll see the various levels. The local level, we actually presented at the Native Plant Society's June meeting, followed by a tour of the place. And we do newspaper articles, conservation modules, and website. We'll see a lot of that later. At the regional level, we had an article in Bay Sounding Magazine. And actually, you can just Google Mary Jane Memorial Bridge and you'll get the article. And then Flipsy, their newsletter, had another article on the work that we had done. So we exceeded our project goals there. Next slide. This is the success on the website. We had roughly 850 visitors per month. It's a pretty steady sort of thing. Right now, the website is down. We're waiting on a new webmaster. It's hard with the turnover of people. Expensive too. Next slide. Regional education. We look at our sample of our wetlands newsletter. It comes out about every 2 weeks. Here's an example. These are all the ones that came out in January of 2019. See there, all the way down to, if you look in the lower right, you'll see me wrestling an alligator. It's a really funny story. Okay, next the next slide. We also report to the HOA. Each month we submit report of what we did and what we're going to do next. Also, following that, next slide, regional education, we usually put in articles in the newspaper, the local newspaper, see where we have wood storks, white egrets, walking catfish. That was a lot of fun. We had thousands of walking catfish in our lakes. You'd never know it because they only come out at night. It's like being in, if you're working in the pond, it's like being in a giant vat of shrimp. They're all over, you know. It's really interesting when you get one of them in your pants. They have stingers. Okay. It's hard without getting feedback. Okay, next we had the regional education, a photo calendar. Next slide, please. We made a photo calendar up and then sold it to the residents and other people. We have a lot, and their relatives and all this stuff. We ordered 150 calendars. We made a profit of $475. It was such a smashing success that we actually continued on and repeated it in 2020, and we'll repeat it again in 2021. That was a good thing of education, of showing how beautiful the area is that they live in. They want to show it off, and this is a convenient way of doing it. Okay, next slide, we'll look at the volunteer hours just for this project. Okay, just look at the ones in yellow is the ones with this project. If you add all these things up, tidal stream restoration, dredging, these are volunteer hours. We have 352 through September 2019 when we completed the project. If you take the national average of volunteer time, it's $25 an hour. We donated that year, 2019, $33,000 in volunteer labor in just 9 months. 8,000, almost 9,000 was just for this project. The total project, you know, over a 3-year period was $60,000, $60,000 project. I want to thank several people, Tampa Bay naturally, Flipsy's education grant, and the Florida Native Plant Society, without whose help we would never have started or finished. And we'll finish up here by actually figuring out what does Gandhi's March to the Sea, Tampa Bay's Charting the Course, and the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge have in common. They're all associated with salt and restoration. Gandhi's March to the Sea was an effort to draw attention to the event, and reopening of Woodstock Pond was symbolic of restoration of the balance of nature. Charting the Course addresses the lingering historical challenges and better management of freshwater inflow, which is what we did to remove physical barriers to tidal circulation. And now Woodstock Pond it needs the salt to retain a mangrove population, of course, a habitat for endangered waterfowl and a nursery for saltwater fish. And lastly, the Mary Jane Memorial Bridge is a path across the tidal stream leading to Woodstock Pond, and is a great symbol for our volunteer project. The project came together in a serendipitous manner, and no one went to jail. That's it. Oh, by the way, I'm an electrical engineer. Any questions?
Thanks, Ernie. Great to hear no one went to jail.
Okay, well, not on that project. Walt has
Ernie, very interesting projects. We're trying to do some work which includes dredging on a place called Ramon Creek, and I was just wondering, did you deal with any problems with getting permits and that sort of thing to take that silt out?
Okay, I took all this. That's a good question. Good question, and that's a hard thing, dredging, because first it's not funded by very many grants. So we had to go work around. We had the Tampa Bay T-Birth. T-Birth was funded that, and a lot of that. We actually funded it, the multi-funding over about 3 or 4 years for this particular project. Now, what we do is working with SwiftMud. We work with SwiftMud, but as long as you're restoring it to the original drawings, what we were doing, always restoring it to the original drawings. We didn't have any problems with permits or anything like that. There are things you have to do. You have to, like that, we call the goat and stuff like that. You have to protect, when you're dredging, you have to make sure the company understands what all the rules are, but you have to bar it off here and there to make sure you don't get any spills, any gasoline spills or other kind of spills like that. And
So you just essentially got the permitting through SwiftMud.
well, the key is we didn't have to get any permitting as long as we were restoring it to the original condition. We had all the SwiftMud maps. You get those readily from SwiftMud. We had them anyway. And restoring it to the original condition. That's the same thing on all the ponds and things like that, what they were restoring. Always restoring it to the original condition. And we kept everything on site too. You know, the mulch, we kept on site. That was very handy. The muck, we didn't do anything with it. We kept it on site. That's important too. And then it's important to find the right dredging company. Oh, yeah. You know, most of the dredging companies you really can't afford. We, in the years past, we had hired one and we spent, I don't know, $8,000. It was a super big thing, but it didn't dredge that much. We finally got down to that mini excavator from a sort of a tree service, and that sort of did the trick. And working with them too. We always work with whoever we hire. We work with them, and they get about as much labor out of us we get out of them. But they got the big equipment.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? Dan.
I'm wondering, how's the stream doing? Have you had problems with erosion and having it fill back in? And what have you had to do to prevent that from happening?
Okay, we got a couple of things. Erosion, first off, once we dredged it, we planted that seed and it just turned green, you know. It was really nice, but that didn't last long. It's slowly coming back, roots are and stuff like that. We haven't had many problems of, mostly it's invasive species. You know, as volunteers, we're out there constantly taking out invasive species that come back, ones that we haven't, you know, we poison them and stuff like that, but they're still the seeds and all these things. So it's a lot of maintenance that goes on that. But erosion, it's going to occur, and it occurs. We could have dredged more and things like that, but we dredged enough to get a nice flow and that sort of thing. But it does require a lot of maintenance.
How long do you think it'll be before it needs dredging again?
If you keep the invasives down, it's been 20 years or something like that of filling in. It'd probably be at least 20 years. And it wouldn't, maybe longer, 40 years. Based on our maintenance of it. The Wetlands Committee is a very active committee. They're out there formerly once a month, the work day, then mostly more than that. They fit in a lot. So they're committed to it. They're proud of it. It's their community. They own it, and they're maintaining it quite nicely. A lot of work.
Hey, thanks.
That's about a $60,000 effort, removing all the invasives in that whole area, the wood stork and the tidal stream, over a period of about 3 years, roughly. Mm-hmm. That's what we've reported on, was just the 9 months that we worked on that, the final 9 months. A lot of work. Okay, any more questions?
Freezing up.
Great. Well, thanks, Ernie. Appreciate you and all the hard work you guys did out there. I really like this project because of all of the community involvement. We've had last year we had a couple Bay Mini grant applicants, but they didn't have any of the community members that actually lived in the association involved. So I think it's really great that yours has so much involvement.
We even get neighbors coming in that don't even live there. They either like the spirit that's going on, the team of the volunteers, and the spirit's going on, what they do, and people come and walk the nature trails 2 miles, and they want to maintain it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it really builds some ownership of the property.
That's it, ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And the newsletters help a lot too, because the newsletters are, if you go back and look at there's a couple of samples of January 29, they're funny. You know, like you'll see one picture there where I got the alligator in the garbage can or dipped dumpster. And I actually got him out of the lake and I was going to dump him, put him in the dumpster to get rid of him because they stink. Then somebody in the building said, "You can't put him in that dumpster." So you'll see a picture of me with the alligator right beside me, hanging out of the dumpster, saying, "Good night, Gracie." And so the older ones will understand that. But just carrying around that dead alligator, trying to get rid of him. And that was one of many. We've had plenty. We've had 20-foot alligators or something there. And the skull is in the clubhouse of the 20-footer. A lot of alligator stories, possums, raccoons, you name it, armadillos.
Wow. I think this is a great mix of projects and really highlights what we're trying to do through the Bay Mini Grant program, providing a little bit of a seed source money to catalyze the community into action. And I think all 5 of the projects exemplify that in different ways, and very much appreciate all and everyone's hard work that were involved with these projects, because without a community, the Bay wouldn't have been restored to the condition we have seen it today. So again, I want to show my appreciation and give thanks for everyone. And I think they're all highly ranked projects that each could deserve a Golden Mangrove Award. So thank you again for taking the time and presenting this information to the Community Advisory Committee this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. And thank you, everybody. So just a couple other updates. We have some volunteer events that are coming up. One of those is the Robinson's Preserve expansion planting. This is Manatee County who's putting this on, but they asked us to share it with our channels. And I know that some of you do live and like to volunteer at Robinson. So these events are happening March and April, and they're mostly during the week. I think they're having like 1 or 2 events each week because they have a ton of plants that they're trying to get out. So if you're interested, the registration link is on the agenda, and I'll share it after this. And then we also have an event on May 1st with Friends of Salt Creek. This is basically the jump start of the Bay Mini Grant Restoration Award that was the Bay Mini Grant project that was awarded to Friends of Salt Creek to help restore the Salt Creek. So this is a cleanup event. It's May 1st from 9 to noon. And then we have another one on May 22nd out at Fort DeSoto. This is also a cleanup. This is in partnership with Ideas for Us, which is a Orlando-based organization that focuses on sustainability. And then we're also partnering with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. So that event, again, is at Fort DeSoto on May 22nd. What's really fun about this event is that you get free admission to the park all day, which I think is awesome. And I know I will be taking advantage of that on the day. And then we just had one in June that I'm working with Manatee County to sort of work out the details, but that will be June 12th. And it's to celebrate World Oceans Week. So we're doing a water-based cleanup. So basically we're going to be paddling out from Terracea Preserve State Park and picking up trash along those mangrove islands over there. So if you're interested, that should be a really fun event. It is water-based. So we make sure to bring your kayaks and paddle boards, and I'll ask Harry to bring his boat probably. So again, the Golden Mangrove Award Committee, I sent out an email a while back asking folks who were interested.
Sheila, Walt was raising his hand. I don't know if you had a question.
I just wanted to mention Coffee Pot Bayou will have a cleanup event in terrestrial as well as water on the 8th of May. And the setup will be at the Oak and Coffee Pot Drive location where we always meet, and both ourselves as well as the people from Keep Pinellas Beautiful will be there, and we hope if anyone is interested, we'll put more out on this. We got plenty of time.
And Sheila, if I can add, just to add to the May 1st event, we're supporting the Friends of Salt Creek and actually going to be doing some planting that day there as well in partnership with the city of St. Pete. So that's part of an Estuaries grant that we received to and I apologize, my head's everywhere, to revitalize the MLK corridor and surrounding communities. So we're going to be planting cypress plants and some understory in their stormwater ponds. So that's happening that day too. So it's kind of all in partnership with everybody, but cleanup and planting on the May 1st at Bartlett Park. So come prepared to potentially get wet too, or dirty.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of it.
Definitely. Yeah, I know he's hoping that it'll be a big event. From what I talked to him, he also mentioned something about removing some Brazilian peppers. So if a few CAC members want to come out and help remove some Brazilian pepper, that would be awesome too. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get out there. So thanks, Stephanie and Walt, for adding.
Also, Sheila, we have the mini grant for Gulfport. They're installing their rain garden this Saturday morning coming up, and it's a public event, so I think they're going to have everybody socially distant. It's a pretty big area that they're going to be planting. So if you're interested in doing that, you can help them out.
Awesome. And that's this Saturday?
That's this Saturday down near Gulfport Casino in that area. It's a big area right on the corner. You can't miss it.
Yeah, for the one for the Bay Mini Grant Award.
Right.
Cool. Great. Lots of fun stuff happening over the next couple months.
And if you want to get into Fort DeSoto Park for free, you can volunteer as a bird steward with Audubon. And you can, no set schedule. You just, sign up to go whichever weekend days you want to go and get in for free. Just saying.
You can also go out to Egmont and work there at the museum free and get a ride on a ferry boat through the it's the group that runs it,
The Egmont Key Alliance. Yeah, they're only letting like 5 or 6 people out there.
Yeah, I think it's temporarily on hold. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So again, if you're interested in being on the Golden Mangrove Awards Committee, let me know. Other than that, it's pretty much staff announcements. I know, Gary, you had an announcement to make. Pass it over to Gary Rollerson, our ecologist.
Thank you, Sheila. Hope you all are doing well. Hopefully, as most of you know, last year we produced an update to our Habitat Master Plan, which established 10-year targets and 30-year goals for restoration in multiple habitats throughout the Bay. And one of the components of and recommendations from the Master Plan update was the creation of what we're calling the Habitat Restoration Consortium. And it's going to be a subcommittee of our TAC that is looking at habitat restoration throughout the Bay through the lens of the Habitat Master Plan and trying to bring together all the folks that have responsibility for different habitat restoration components. And we had our first meeting in December, and there was some discussion about different user groups, and the meeting was attended by about 70 people, of course, virtually. One of the user groups that they were interested in trying to bring to have a little bit of additional representation was just the citizens on the street. And so Sheila and I were talking about this and thinking that somebody from the CAC would be a wonderful addition to that group. And this is an ad hoc committee. Anybody is welcome to attend with an interest in the habitat realm. But and this is definitely appreciate the work that Ernie and Walt have done, and actually might try to get you all to do some sort of presentation to them at some point. But we were thinking one of the really good nexus would be Erica Moulton with the STEM Center work that's going on, the students that she has, and her work at the CAC. And I'd just like to ask you all.
Unfortunately, I think she left.
Oh, well, we've actually already. Okay. We've had some conversations with her, and she's expressed interest.
Okay.
She'd be great.
Is there anyone else who would be interested in participating on this or have any opinions about this?
I'd be interested. I mean, you know, I have a background besides this stuff we're doing terrestrially that I made a lot of effort in when I was working coral reef restoration. I went all over the world doing that, and I'll be glad to, if there's hard bottom habitat or coral reef restoration issues that come up, I'll be glad to, you know, throw 2 cents in there.
I appreciate that, Walt. You know, I've definitely got you on my electronic Rolodex when those questions arise.
Okay.
That's a virtual meeting, right, Gary? So if somebody wanted to lurk, could they come and just listen in?
Absolutely. It's available on our website right now. All the contact information. It's on April the 16th in the afternoon, so you can just go to the calendar there.
Did you move it? I have it on the 14th.
No,
or do I have it wrong?
There's a seagrass. I think there's a seagrass meeting on the 14th. Or do I have
no,
I've got them backwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right, Jan. The Habitat Restoration Consortium is on the 14th, and the seagrass meeting is on the 16th. We live in a world of meetings, and it's flying together.
And they're both virtual.
It happens all the time. I mean, it just.
Yep. Thank you.
Gary, also let Walt know about the artificial reef project we're contemplating with the city of St. Petersburg off of Point Pinellas, and he'd be a good one to keep involved with that as well.
Yes, if y'all are interested. So in the habitat, in the hard bottom habitat assessment that CSA completed for us a couple of years ago now, which fed into the habitat master plan, about I think it's 4 miles south of Pinellas Point, they discovered a tire reef.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, my dad's a heavy duty fisherman down there, and he said I fished on there when I was a kid, so I definitely don't remember it. But we're trying, you know, concerned about the petrochemicals that are bleeding off these things all the time. You know, Broward County has millions of them in the bay that they are offshore that they've been removing for a couple of decades now, and we're going to work with the city of St. Petersburg to probably remove all those and maybe put some artificial habitat instead.
Yeah, Gulfstream put a lot of limestone boulders in on the other side of the bay, part of the mitigation for the pipeline, and those things. The last time I was on them, they were doing very, very well, and they'd probably always favor the natural product versus an artificial substrate anyway.
And for those of you who don't know, Walt has a coral reef name for him, don't you, Walt?
I didn't name it for me, but somebody did, yeah.
Somebody did. As I was looking at metadata for something, I'm like, oh, look at this. This must be named after Walt. So,
well, you know, claim to fame or something.
Yeah. I think it's cool.
Everybody gets 10 seconds, right? So, at any rate, yeah, I'll be glad to throw my 10 cents worth of, you know, what I know and what might be a good idea. But I certainly on the tires I did some work on those ones over in Broward, and that was just a hopeless mess.
Luckily, I don't think we have nearly the scope that they do, but it's still, you know,
the magnitude is terrible.
It's scattered probably over about 5 acres if I've drawn my polygons correctly.
We got 3 tires out of Coffee Pot on the last our last cleanup event that were seen by several people, and then we finally rescued him. We also got a bicycle out of there that was pretty neat.
Right, well,
Oh, Gary, I'd be able to help. You mentioned me a second ago. I'll do whatever you want. And I'm still disappointed that they didn't name the bridge after me.
They should have, yeah.
I got nothing, Ernie. I appreciate it. But yeah, I will. Like I said, I'll be reaching out to you all definitely to talk about the citizen projects. As a shining example, like Ed said, of the work that the people in this community are doing. Much appreciated.
But if Ernie helps, do you have to name the new reef after him?
I don't want to reef. And I don't want to go to jail.
Okay. We can name one of the ponds, right?
Oh, there you go.
What happened to your neighbor's product, Ernie?
The bridge?
No, the stuff he was growing.
He discontinued that before we got there.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah.
There was a rapid harvest, probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 100 yards from the HOA office right there.
Well, maybe he had glaucoma. Who knows?
Well, the density of the peppers was just so great. You couldn't see in there, and we couldn't get in there until we started harvesting.
Yeah, they do grow well.
all righty. Well, thanks, Gary, and thanks all. Joe, is there anything you want to talk about?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to give a quick update on some of the communications initiatives and projects we've got in the hopper. We got quite a few tarpon tag things coming up. One of which I've already mentioned with G. Steve that we're really looking forward to. Still working on a couple tweaks to that plan, but that should start rolling out soon. We've also, thanks to Ronald Porter from the CAC, we've got a Ecker College collaboration with a freshman and sophomore class there, and they're going to help us think of some innovative ways to get the tarpon tag in front of new audiences, similar to some college partnerships we've done in the past. So really looking forward to having a lot of their new ideas, and in just one meeting so far, they've said some things that I just simply haven't thought of. So I think there's a lot of value to their fresh perspective. We've got, as I've mentioned in the past, we've got the 30th anniversary of TBAP coming up this year. We'll be celebrating around the same time as Basis. Still some planning to do with that, but we do have a new logo. We are working on a web page, a landing page, where we'll host a lot of the information that I'll be sure to share with you later on, but things like some of the outreach initiatives that we'll be doing, photo contest, photo journal, things that we plan on putting together. They all need a home, and we're planning on using the landing page as that home. So that's hopefully going to be created within the next week or so. And then I'll also like to provide the CAC with a sort of promo kit, just shareables, things like that, that if you want to share some of the 30th related content, you'll be able to. And then let's see what else we got. We have this is a very new thing, but we'll be doing an AMA, which is a Ask Me Anything for the water quality results from 2020. So we'll be doing that on Instagram. And I know whether or not you're on Instagram, we'll be figuring out the best way to share some of those questions that we invite people to submit to us on that platform. So it's something we haven't done before. Maya and I are working on it. It should be pretty interesting, but the main goal is to just give people a chance to engage with that press release that we had released a couple weeks ago, in a new and interesting way. So we're looking forward to that. And then I'm not sure if I've mentioned this in the past, but we've been working with ICAR, the Initiative on Coastal Adaptation and Resilience, on their Community Climate Change Education Series. We're going to be spending the next couple months into the summer figuring out how to best present that series and continue it. But in the meantime, they do have an event that I welcome all of you to attend if you'd like. That's on April 7th with USF's Jamie Summer, and that's going to be about women's participation in climate change. That's at 7 p.m., and you can find that, as always, with any of the content on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram. And, of course, feel free to reach out to me directly. And I think that's what I got for right now.
Cool. Thanks, Joe. Any questions or comments for Joe? Alrighty.
Sheila, can you pull up the water quality scorecard and just make sure that everybody kind of sees the summary? Can you pull it up real quick, or do you want me to?
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Did you want to talk about it, Maya?
I can, or you're free to do it.
Sure. So just a couple other updates. Our water quality report card is out. You may or may not have heard about this already. It's been getting quite a bit of press, but this is something that our program puts out every year. And basically we use monthly water quality data and take the average of that to create this water quality report card. It focuses on chlorophyll A, which essentially gives us an idea of how much algae is in the water, as well as light penetration. And we use these two metrics because seagrass is one of our indicator species, and seagrass needs light to grow, obviously. And if excess nutrients are in the water, it causes algae to grow, which blocks the light. So basically, this report card just gives us an idea of the different water quality conditions. Most of Tampa Bay is doing relatively well, or good for water quality. Unfortunately, we have seen excess chlorophyll in Old Tampa Bay for the 6th year in a row. So far, it is still allowing enough light penetration that seagrass should be able to grow, but it is something that we are monitoring. There were a couple caveats. There were a couple months this year that the EPC who takes the water quality samples, that they couldn't go out and sample. So that's not included in this data. There were quite a few pyridinium blooms that we've seen over the past few years in Old Tampa Bay. So just keep that in mind. This is an area that we're really focusing on. It still shows that we're battling a lot of nutrient problems in Old Tampa Bay, and that we still have to be really vigilant moving forward. Maya, is there anything else or Ed, anything else you want to add to that?
I think you covered it well. I dropped a link in there and recent stories that have been running through the local press. Maya's done some interviews for Fox 13 as well as Channel 10. So we'll drop those in the chat, and feel free to look at those as well. So there's a couple different initiatives that we're focused on in Old Tampa Bay to hopefully get that Bay segment back on track.
Yeah, and I think that this is really important. Well, it's really important and is one of the major stories of Tampa Bay, and has been for our success, is water quality and seagrass. But it's also important to keep this in mind because in the next month or so, the seagrass reports and seagrass acreage reports are going to come out that I'm hoping that we can give y'all an update on that next time. So all of water quality and seagrass are a couple of other really important focuses of the estuary program. So just want to keep y'all in the loop of what's been happening, and so that if you get any questions. And then just real quick, next meeting, we are coming up on our 5th anniversary of the CCNP. So it's time to do an update, and as Maya said earlier, basically do a temperature check to see where we are and what achievements we've made thus far, and what we need to, how we need to shift priorities and stuff like that. So start thinking about different outreach priorities that you would like to see in the CCNP update, and be sure to also consider that we do want the CCNP to be actionable. It basically should be basically is our guiding document in everything that we do as a program. So as you start thinking about these outreach priorities, also think about ways and metrics that we can use to measure those and to track the achievements and track our successes moving forward. So just put that in as a little teaser, because will probably take up a big part of our conversation next time. And I really hope that it can be a conversation, and that y'all can be really involved in making that CCMP update for our communication and outreach priorities moving forward. So with that, is there anything else anyone else wants to add for the good of the team?
I just have a comment on that water quality report card that Old Tampa Bay may still be a problem child, but just looking at that chart over time, it's just amazing how much progress has been made. And we should never forget that, and know that the efforts that TBEP makes really have made a humongous difference in the quality of Tampa Bay and for its residents.
Yep.
I also think it's important that it wasn't just TBEP, but it was a partnership, and it really takes everybody to help achieve this and help make sure that we don't slide back into some of the issues that we worked so hard to overcome. But it takes all of us, businesses, private organizations, community members. Yeah, so.
Can I also say that as to that report card, I don't remember the source, but I'm sure they took the information from this and reported on it, that they were discussing part of the reason of this is the lack of flushing due to the bridge there. I mean, it's still good for the Gandy and the Howard Franklin, but maybe the Courtney Campbell, doesn't have the width of it to be able to get as much as the other two, so they can, disperse it even more. So
I just want to be clear that it's all of the causeways, not just the Courtney Campbell, that impede the circulation in that bay segment. It's really cool because FDOT did one project to put some holes in the causeway on the east side of the Courtney Campbell, and that's really what we'd like to see them do on the west side, not just of the Courtney Campbell, but also of those other bridges as well.
Mm-hmm.
And keep producing those nutrients.
There was a Tampa Bay circulation study at one point, right, Maya?
Yeah, Ed and I have been dusting off some of the findings from the old Tampa Bay model that looked at, it kind of synthesized some of the work of the muck that accumulates in that part of the bay, that's somewhat connected to the Lake Tarpon outfall canal, some of those large channels that discharge to that part of the bay, and then also looked at how we could improve Old Tampa Bay by enhancing circulation, like you're talking about, Jan, and like we said, sort of our bread and butter, which is continuing to reduce nutrients from all sources. So from wastewater treatment plants, from our stormwater, from atmospheric deposition from our cars as we're commuting, all those things. It's important to keep working to control that at the source.
Alrighty. And then just everybody remember, June 23rd is our next meeting. So add it to your schedules. I'll send out when I send out the follow-up from this meeting, I'll also send out the link so that you can just add it to your calendars. Thanks everyone for the amazing presentations, all the work that you do through the Bay Mini Grant Program and through all the other things that you all do. we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That was fun.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.